Okay, I decided to make a video about the lab we're going to do for our stoichiometry study, and it is called percent yield, and this is what the packet looks like that you'll be using. And what we're going to do is we're going to make salt, just table salt like you use on your food, out of baking soda and a 1 molar solution of hydrochloric acid. When we mix these two things together, we're going to get a certain amount of salt, which we will determine at the end to see how much we got. We also get off CO2 gas, which you'll see bubbling in a little bit, and we have water, which will evaporate off to see how much salt we have left. I'll show you a balanced equation for that on the board in person. I want to go over basically the procedure for doing this so you can see how everything's done, and it may help you when you do your work. Okay? The things that we need are going to be the packet, an electronic scale, an evaporating dish that looks like this, gloves for your hands because we're working with acid, safety goggles, of course, our reactants, which are the baking soda and the acid, and then a spoon to spoon out our baking soda, a pipette to get our acid out of the flask, and maybe this 25 milliliter graduated cylinder, but definitely this 100 meter graduated cylinder. And then over here in the last step, when we heat this up, we're going to need our ring stand, Bunsen burner, ring, which is right here, and this clay triangle that we'll put the evaporating dish in to get all the water out. Okay, so step 1 on your procedure says set up your ring stand, and you're set up like that. The second one says put on your safety gloves and goggles, so make sure you've done that. The third step, right here on the packet, says set up the evaporating dish on the scale and record its weight accurately in your notes. So I'm going to make sure first that my scale is on 0, and it is. I'm going to take my evaporating dish and weigh it, and I get 49.79 grams. So I'm going to write that down on my packet on the page that looks like this. This is our data page. Right here where it says mass of evaporating dish, 49.79 grams. Right there. Okay? And that's what I want you to do the same. Write down your weight there. All right, the next thing your procedure says to do is to get about 2 grams of baking soda. Doesn't have to be exact, but close. Use your spoon and sprinkle it in the evaporating dish until you get to about 2. Okay. I'm a little over 2, so what I'm going to do, in fact, if you would do this first, it would be great. Go ahead and take it empty and zero that out, okay? And then add 2. So I'm going to put back what I had in it to see how much I had. And I get to almost 3, so I'm going to take some out until I have 2. Okay, there's 2.02. I'm going to call that close enough. Looks about like that much, not a lot. But make sure there's no lumps in it. So take your spoon and break it up. Make sure it's not lumpy. Because when we react it, those lumps take longer to react than the powder. So there's your powder. You're good to go. All right. So write down that weight in the table where it says sodium bicarbonate. I'm going to go all the way to the last column and write 2.02 grams. That is what I use, 2.02 grams. Okay? I have my evaporating dish that has my baking soda in it. I'm going to put it on the ring stand. We're not going to use fire yet, but we will in a few minutes. And then I'm going to put on top of that a watch glass just to act as a cover that I can see through. Now, I need to start putting in my acid. So what I'm going to do is, in a minute, I will quantify how much acid I put in. So the first thing I need to do is see how much acid did I start out with. So I'm going to take my acid, pour it in the 100 milliliter graduated cylinder, and I see that I have about 79 milliliters. So I'll write that down somewhere on my page. I started with 79. I'm just going to put it right here, 79 milliliters of HCl. In a minute, after I've used it, I'll do this again, and I'll see what the difference is, and that's how much acid I used. So I'm going to go ahead and pour it back here now. And we'll measure it again in a minute. Okay, I'm going to put this in. I'm going to start out very slowly because this reaction can be pretty vigorous. Okay, so what I've done is I've filled my bulb up with the acid, and I'm going in the spout of the evaporating dish, and I'm kind of dripping it in, and you can probably see and hear what's going on. We're getting the reaction. The bubbles you see are the CO2. The acid is reacting with the baking soda to form salt water. You see the water is already forming here on the underside of the watch glass. I'm going to keep adding acid until all of the bubbling stops. I'm adding it slowly so it doesn't bubble out of the spout and get everywhere. Okay, I still hear it reacting. As the acid is used up, it stops. Some more. Okay, I kept adding the acid until it looked like it stopped reacting, and then I took my spoon and just stirred it a little bit just to make sure everything had dissolved. And you see here what I have left. It's a clear liquid. What that is the salt is now dissolved in water. So we've got to get rid of the liquid that's here so we can see how much salt is in there. So I'm going to leave my watch glass on here. And I'm going to slowly heat this to evaporate off the water by using my Bunsen burner. Okay, now you see that we are heating the water. We have a nice flame. It's not licking up over the top and touching the evaporating dish, because if you overheat that evaporating dish, it may explode. Okay, so we want to keep the heat hot enough to boil the water, but not too hot to explode the evaporating dish. As you can see, the water is just about to start to boil. And you're going to need to just boil this until all the liquid is gone. Okay, this is like we did with our copper in the other experiment, except we were using the hot plate. I decided to use the Bunsen burners today. So I'm going to turn off the video. You've seen the procedure now. And when all the water is gone, I'll show you what it looks like when there's just salt in the evaporating dish. So I'll be right back. Something that I've been boiling here for about 15 minutes. And what we're seeing is we're starting to see a little bit of salt forming on this watch glass. So at the end of the experiment, we're going to have to get that weight as well, and I'll show you how to do that. But you see we have just a little bit of the liquid still inside, and the salt is starting to show up around the edges. And that is salt like you eat on food. While you're waiting for this to boil, there's something else you need to do. When we use the acid, we need to figure out how much we used. And when we started, before we took any out and put in there, we had poured it over in here, determined that we were starting with 79 milliliters. We need to see how much we have left. So what do we got left now? And it's about 40 milliliters. If I'm reading at the meniscus, it's about 40. So what the difference in 79 and 40 is, that is how much we use.
It's 46.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, cameraman. It's actually 46. Yes, it is. Very good. It's 46. So I need to subtract 46 from my 79, and that will tell me how much I actually put in to the reaction. So that would be 3 and 3. 33 milliliters of HCl is what we use. So go ahead and write that down here. 33 milliliters. We'll convert that to grams shortly. Okay, we're still boiling, so we'll come back to the video later, take one more look, see how much liquid we have to go, and we'll come back in a minute. We're almost to the end of this liquid, so I need to show you how to get the very last amount of liquid out. See how I'm moving the Bunsen burner flame back and forth so we don't get a hot spot as we get that very last bit of liquid out of the evaporating dish. So you're going to move that back and forth, back and forth. Keep in mind that it is very hot. I wouldn't touch it with your hand. And also we've got some liquid on top of this that we need to get rid of too. So we need to heat the top as well. Very carefully, going back and forth, back and forth. We've got to get all of the moisture out of the system. So it'll take you about 5 minutes, or however long it takes, to make sure you've got all the liquid out of the bottom and out of the top. You may need to turn up your flame a little bit to do that. Still, as long as you have steam coming off, you have liquid in the system. So, whoops, heat it on top. It's kind of hard to do, but heat it on the top and the sides so all the liquid is gone.